introducing real simplification to the taxonomy disclosures, absolutely necessary if we are serious about alleviating some administrative burdens and in line with our commitment to competitiveness. Now it is important that Parliament is not objecting and not delaying, because it should be prompt entering into force, giving companies what they desire, legal certainty. That is very important in our unpredictable time. If not, we are undermining our objectives of this Act. 2 points for clarification. First, Commissioner, you know that Parliament has extended the scrutiny period to 5th of January 2026. Therefore, amended provisions are not entering into force this year. But the Act provides for so-called transitional exemption, allowing companies to depend on the present standards, but also, this is my assumption, they could apply new simplified procedures, simplified templates that is easier for them. Many institutions have already started with simplified procedures for 2025. So we need, and this is so important for companies, assurance from the Commission that they could rely on simplified templates for 2025 and not are facing risk of legal challenge afterwards. And the second point, shortly, that is regarding so-called optional green assets ratios, optional relief. To avoid this taxonomy reporting, companies are required to include, according to the Act, the following statement in their management report, and now I am reading. No activities are claimed as being associated with economic activities that qualify as environmentally sustainable under Articles 3 and 9 of the taxonomy regulation. The ambiguity is of this statement. What does it mean, claims? So this is important for the Commission to clarify whether not only fast reporting companies but also banks are eligible to use this optional relief. The end.
Grazie. Grazie. Michalis Agipantela, 1 minuto e mezzo. Vi prego di rispettare i tempi.
Dear Chair, Commissioner Albuquerque, colleagues. This delegated act is a targeted simplification that preserves the integrity of the European Union taxonomy while cutting unnecessary red tape so companies can focus resources where they matter the most. It exempts non-financial companies from assessing taxonomy, eligibility and alignment for activities that cumulatively account for less than 10% of capital, of CAPEX or OPEX expenditure. It also allows companies to forgo OPEX alignment where OPEX is not material, while maintaining disclosure of totals and explanations. Reporting templates are streamlined with materially fewer data points and clearer summaries, which will ease the burden of the preparation by companies and auditors without sacrificing decision-useful information for the markets. These measures apply from the 2026 reporting cycle and form part of the Commission's wider omnibus simplification efforts to restore competitiveness while preserving the environmental ambition that we have set in stone in this Parliament. The APP will continue to advocate for counter-bureaucracy and helping Europe invest and grow. Stakeholders across have called for this kind of materiality-based relief. Some, including our group, has suggested an even higher threshold of up to 30% as discussed in policy deliberations. And 10% threshold is a workable compromise that provides immediate relief and clarity without compromising environmental and climate ambition. Crucially, the taxonomy remains a robust compass for capital allocation, and the simplified templates still ensure transparency, comparability and accountability in line with the goals of the European climate law. Colleagues in ENVI and ECON are rightly vigilant about ambition and can be assured the materiality exemptions preserve core disclosures, require explanations, and keep the focus on what drives real-world outcomes. On that basis, I urge for broad support for this delegated act so the omnibus package can help Europe meet climate and environmental targets realistically and on time. And sorry for...
You're lucky.
César Luena.
Muy bien, presidente. Gracias, comisaria. Gracias por estar aquí, se lo agradezco. Ojalá, aquí, a la izquierda. Ojalá hubiera venido también la comisaria Roswell, porque también es un tema de medio ambiente, por eso le agradezco que esté aquí. Bueno, este acto delegado lo entendemos como una tendencia de este desmantelamiento progresivo de los pilares del Pacto Verde Europeo, los objetivos, los plazos, hoy la taxonomía, que es una herramienta fundamental para canalizar las inversiones hacia la sostenibilidad. Y ustedes pues lo vacían de contenido. Así es como lo ve mi grupo. Mire, varias preocupaciones. Modifican con este acto delegado los criterios de no causar un perjuicio significativo, eliminan referencias claves al REACH, lo que ha dado lugar a que sustancias catalogadas como tóxicas para la salud o para el medio ambiente las podrán ustedes clasificar como sostenibles. ¿Cómo se puede justificar esta contradicción? ¿No cree usted que es una grave vulneración del principio de precaución y del objetivo fundamental, que es el de contaminación cero? Más temas, gas y petróleo. Las grandes empresas del sector fósil ya no van a estar obligadas a reportar el porcentaje de sus ingresos alineados con la taxonomía verde. ¿Por qué se introduce esta exención? ¿Y cómo se evita que se traduzca en realmente un greenwashing de libro sistemático? Tercero, la opcionalidad de la información para ciertas entidades financieras hasta 2027. ¿No supone esto una regresión respecto a los compromisos de transparencia que la Unión ha defendido en foros internacionales? Y, por último, la Comisión ya propuso en la reforma de diligencia debida y del reporte que solo las empresas muy grandes que sobrepasen un umbral tengan que cumplir con la Directiva de Diligencia Debida y con los requisitos de reporte. ¿Por qué ahora esta nueva excepción del 10% de materialidad? ¿No estamos ante una tendencia preocupante poco a poco de vaciar las normas que garantizaban la transparencia y la rendición de cuentas? Mire, esta taxonomía nació para ser una brújula de inversiones sostenibles, pero lo están convirtiendo en un laberinto lleno de excepciones, de trampas, de atajos. Y proteger su integridad es proteger el Pacto Verde Europeo. Gracias.
Grazie. Passiamo adesso la parola alla commissaria per 5 minuti.
Thank you, Chair. So let me try to cover all the questions you asked and provide further explanations. Slot to January, we still would very much like to have these delegated acts, obviously, if not rejected by Parliament, to be approved before year-end. We think it would really increase the certainty for companies on the reporting requirements that they will have for the 26. Let me just verify something. For 25, the rules I haven't changed yet, or have they? And that's the stop the clock.
They will report in 2025, the new simplified rules.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I was just verifying. So they will report in 26, but with the data of 2025 based on the new simplified rules, providing that they are not rejected by Parliament naturally. So that is the legal certainty if the delegated act is not rejected. On the GAR statement which you read, this is aimed for financial institutions because financial institutions have to report on a very large number of clients. So it's not just the companies, but also retail clients. So we're talking about the universe, which is much, much wider than would be the case for any sector, any company not in the financial sector. So this is just for the banks, this statement. So they have a grace period of 2 years, and I think this allows me also to answer one of the questions of Member Luena. We have decided to consider this grace period of 2 years so that banks can adjust. What is the point? We don't want them just to report on data for the big companies. We also want to allow in the their future claims of being taxonomy aligned if we're talking about loans to retail clients on solar panels, efficient housing, all those objectives that actually contribute to a greener, more sustainable economy. And for that, we are giving them a 2-year grace period where they don't have to report, provided they don't claim to be financing in a taxonomy-aligned activities. So, and this is just a grace period for 2 years. After that, it will apply fully. But for these 2 years, they can benefit from this exemption if they don't claim to be financing EU taxonomy-aligned activities. So I hope this clarifies the question, because for the rest of the companies, either they are in scope or they're not. And we have the stop the clock already approved to give certainty for companies while we discuss the changes to CSRD, which is already on your questions, Member Luena, muchas gracias. And about the progressive dismantlement, I think that I can maybe reply to some of your questions in aggregate. This is indeed an attempt to strike the right balance. We aim to preserve the most relevant elements of information and our objectives, but we also have to be mindful of the burden that this has imposed on companies. And many of these were unintended consequences. I don't think that when this was approved first that we thought the impact would be going that far and having such a reporting burden on many companies. So we are trying to preserve what is really important while we adjust the burden for many of the companies. And about the violation of precaution for Annex C, actually we are talking about self-identified chemicals, so or substances. They are not yet included in the list, and companies said that too often it was impossible for them to demonstrate that there was a suitable alternative. So actually they are contributing to our objectives, and they could not claim and benefit from that because they could not demonstrate that for a specific substance there was no reasonable alternative. So we are trying to make this easy, again, trying to get to a balanced outcome, which is our objective. The 10% materiality. Companies still have to be transparent. They have to explain which are those activities and why they are not material. So we still know what they are talking about. But the reporting burden for something which means less than 10% of their overall business, it's probably not that necessary. On transparency, it's still guaranteed because they will have to explain what they are talking about and why is this not material. Thank you.
Adesso passiamo la parola a Mathilde Androuet, che parlerà per 3 minuti perché rappresenta sia la Commissione ENCON che la Commissione ENVI per i Patriot.
Madame la Commissaire, la taxonomie européenne définit les investissements jugés vertueux sur le plan écologique. Elle fait partie intégrante du Pacte vert pour l'Europe. Dès son lancement, nous avons dénoncé ses excès. Au nom de la transition, on imposait des contraintes qui allaient peser lourdement sur nos entreprises. Nous alertions déjà sur cette fuite en avant de la Commission, plus soucieuse de plaire à une minorité d'écologistes alarmistes qu'aux réalités du terrain. Que de temps perdu. Nous avions averti que cette politique risquait de mettre des agriculteurs dans la rue, ce qui a été le cas, et d'affaiblir nos industries. Hélas, ni le Parlement ni la Commission n'ont alors pris la mesure de ces avertissements. Il aura fallu des évaluations, des contestations et des enquêtes pour que la Commission admette enfin que trop de contraintes freinent l'innovation et étranglent nos entreprises. Aujourd'hui, le vocabulaire a changé. On parle de simplifier, de réduire les obligations, de supprimer des annexes, d'alléger des charges. Nous ne pouvons que saluer ce pas dans la bonne direction. Cependant, cela ne suffit pas. La Commission envisage-t-elle d'autres simplifications? Et si oui, lesquelles? Même si le secteur agricole n'est pas directement visé par ce nouvel acte délégué, les grandes entreprises financières et non financières le sont, ce qui peut toucher indirectement le monde agricole. Les exigences de la taxonomie peuvent entraîner des coûts supplémentaires pour les exploitations agricoles et leurs coopératives si elles ne répondent pas exactement aux critères fixés. Or, l'accès au financement est vital pour le développement agricole, notamment pour investir dans l'innovation et la transition. La Commission peut-elle garantir que la simplification introduite par cet acte délégué n'aura pas pour effet direct ou indirect de restreindre ou d'alourdir l'accès au financement des exploitations agricoles européennes? Par ailleurs, d'un point de vue énergétique, les activités nucléaires ont bien été incluses dans la taxonomie depuis 2022, comme vous le reconnaissez, mais de manière temporaire. Vous le savez, les industriels du secteur ont besoin de certitude. La Commission soutient pleinement et de manière non temporaire le nucléaire dans les investissements verts de la taxonomie.
Grazie. Gilles Boyer.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you also, Commissioner. I'm here. No, I'm here? No. Here? And I hope you have a nice weather over there, huh?
It's cloudy in that corner.
And thank you for being with us this evening. Thank you. And thank you also for having undertaken all these efforts to simplify the requirements for companies within the framework of their taxonomy reporting and to have listened to their concerns. Allow me please to underline here that I do see these changes as positive simplification efforts. I remain committed to the value added that this reporting brings and the journey which companies will take. For example, the green asset ratio of many companies will hopefully improve over time. That is what this reporting aims to help us to measure. And taxonomy allows companies to become more sustainable from a range of starting points. It is not intended to be an exclusive club for the already highly sustainable, in my opinion. I had a question about one of my primary concerns in the draft delegated acts about the threshold of a 10% exemption for reporting of non-material activities. During discussion with stakeholders, there were a range of interpretations as to whether this threshold is cumulative or not. I would like to thank you for the clarified text in the proposed delegated act that this is a cumulative threshold. And to what extent do you believe that it risks invalidating the 10% greenwashing waiver? Thank you.
Martin Oisig.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome, Commissioner. Still the same part of the room, the same group. And now, let me start actually with a quotation from your mission letter that you should explore how to scale up sustainable finance, in particular transition finance and climate resilience. Now, this is something which just asking for itself to, use the taxonomy, because I sometimes get the feeling that, the taxonomy is failing. I don't regard 800 billion, I repeat, 800 billion euros of uptake in capital expenditures that are aligned with the taxonomy as a failure. I regard it as a really great kickoff, and it's not going to be an easy task to scale that up, honestly, because it is indeed a great success channeling investment. So I'm wondering, how do you want to ensure that we exploit this properly, the potential? At the same time, indeed, I have to say that Delegated Act is something of a concern because, not mentioning the materiality, but also the changes to the do no significant harm could lead, in my opinion, to greenwashing, especially as it's reducing tenfold the number of dangerous substances that it will be considered to cause significant harm under the taxonomy. So how do you want to have safeguards to ensure that this will not actually turn into, taxonomy-compliant pollution with cancer-causing chemicals? I don't think that's what we want. And last but not least, stability. I heard it before from the colleagues. Now, I wonder what stability you see for the businesses to have to comply with the sustainability and due diligence reporting, where the Commission is also saying that those changes, the Delegated Act now, is only quick fix, that this is something which is pending a broader revision of the climate environment delegated acts and do no significant harm. So I'm a bit concerned about the stability here when Commission is just saying, we just fix something very fast and then we're going to change it again. So could you be more, please, concrete about, your intentions, and what changes do you consider in the do no significant harm? Because indeed our group is strongly behind taxonomy, and this is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Thank you for the questions. I would start with Ms. Androuet. We are now, yes, we are now talking about simplification. As I had the opportunity to say before, we realized that there were unintended consequences of the framework as approved, and we listened to the different stakeholders, we listened to the corporate sector and the challenges that is imposed. So we are trying to come up with a framework which preserves the main objectives, but still allows us to have sorry, the time is not right. Okay, it hasn't restarted. So allows us to preserve the main objectives, but actually is not being so burdensome on the companies which have to report. On agriculture, this is not in the taxonomy, so the agriculture sector is not included in the taxonomy activities. When you say that industry needs certainty and that nuclear needs to be included, well, nuclear is included in the taxonomy now. Monsieur Boyer, you say that taxonomy will help companies to become more sustainable. Yes, we absolutely agree. This is actually meant to allow companies to define how sustainable they are and how they can become more sustainable over time. This is the objective of taxonomy, understanding for the different activities how they can contribute to increased sustainability of the activities that they carry out. Indeed, the 10% materiality is cumulative, and we do not believe, obviously, that the changes that we are proposing will actually be detrimental to the taxonomy. As I have explained, we do believe that we preserve the essential part of taxonomy by making it easier to comply with, but still useful. And we will use, companies will continue to use taxonomy as a way to make it easier for them to finance their initiatives and their investment. And on my mission letter on transition finance, actually, the simplification that we are now doing in the efforts that we are doing to fulfill for companies, to allow companies to fulfill certain requirements of the taxonomy, but not necessarily all of them, is exactly a way to facilitate transition finance. So companies can already be aligned with some of the criteria, not necessarily all, but they are progressing towards becoming more sustainable. And that should be also recognized, and that is also something that we want to do, providing more flexibility to foster a gradual environmental transition, exactly with the aim to scale up transition finance, as you mentioned, which is in my mission letter. On the safeguards of the do no significant harm, this is a very difficult topic, obviously, even because the self-identified substances, they continue to emerge. Every time a company identifies a potential possible adverse impact, they have to report. But we cannot look at this as the single criteria, as with everything else. I mean, none of our objectives can be pursued in isolation. We cannot say there is a potential small risk in this part, and we will actually say that the rest is not valid, even if that activity is actually contributing very positively to our environmental objectives. What we try to do here on these substances is the ones which have not been listed, only the ones which have not been listed, and they may be listed, and at the moment they are listed, they are included automatically. So this is only for the situations because companies told us that it would be often impossible for them to demonstrate that there is no viable alternative for that particularly identified substance. And that would indeed result in the impossibility of them benefiting from the fact that everything else they're doing is actually contributing positively to the objectives. And this was the intention, to find the balance. We don't think it leads to general risks. Which we change it again. Well, we are now on a listening mode. We have to come forward with a general review of the criteria to actually assess whether we need further changes or not. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Commissioner. I will now give the floor to Lara Wolters for the S&D for 1.5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. And at the risk of repeating some things, because I have come here late, so my apologies to the Commissioner and to the Chair. First of all, maybe important to repeat that no law is there because we like rules. I want to repeat that taxonomy was a tool that we conceived to avoid greenwashing and improve comparability, not because we want to make things complex for the sake of it. And in April, we expressed concerns that the objectives that the taxonomy was supposed to be for were put on the line inter alia by the new materiality threshold. The delegated act that was then adopted gives us new reasons for concern, in particular the exemption or optionality for financial undertakings until January 2028. That's clearly a step back, as many financial companies are already successfully reporting under the regulation. I also strongly doubt if that sort of exemption belongs in a delegated act. And that's not the first time that I have concerns like that with this Commission. I think we also have an institutional question here. Should a delegated act have such a clause, or is that something for the co-legislators here in the Parliament and in the Council? So that is something that I would like the Commissioner to comment on. Then, on the do no significant harm criteria for pollution, the Commission chose to reduce the number of substances of area of concern by almost 90%. You just spoke about it, so apologies if I repeat, but there, again, of concern. The only more positive thing that we could see was the potential inclusion of partial taxonomy alignment. But there, do you commit to do no significant harm as a baseline for that partial alignment? Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Bas Eickhout for the Greens. 1.5 minutes.
Thank you very much. And over here, Commissioner, so you have to just look to this side. You said that we try to address unintended consequences, but what you're doing is much more than that, and you have to be honest about that. First of all, in already what Lara Wolters said, banks are already reporting, and now suddenly you make it voluntary for 2 years. Why are you doing that? They are doing it already. They were happy with it. You are creating uncertainty and complexity. I mean, you can repeat saying simplicity, but that doesn't make it simple by just saying it. And that's the same with the materiality threshold. I'm happy that my colleague already understands it, but Ernst & Young and PwC have different approaches to it now already. So you are adding complexity by this materiality threshold. That is not what we want. You are making things more complicated. And here I really want to have a clear answer for you. You know that in some of these approaches, this could mean that oil and gas companies like Shell, Total, can be excluded from reporting obligations. Is that indeed the consequence of your materiality threshold? Be very clear. It's a yes or no question, and you know the list. And it's very important. And we want to know then also, are you going to come up with binding guidelines? Are you coming up with a review? These are things that need to happen. But sorry, what you're doing here is adding complexity, and you're not simplifying at all. This is deregulation for oil and gas companies.
Thank you. For the Greens, Jutta Paulus.
Yes, thank you very much. Right next to Bas. Just keep looking in this direction. I'm really puzzled. I mean, the Commission seems to have had a target for cutting data points, no matter whether they're useful or not. And you didn't even invest the time to properly analyze what you were doing. A simple fact check shows blatant errors in your numbers. For example, when it comes to the number of chemicals that have no harmonized classification yet, you overstate these by a factor of 3. You speak of, I will not further elaborate on what Bas has already been saying. I would just like to know, did you hear the champagne corks popping in the fossil fuel company's headquarters when you published the omnibus? And you speak of clarity, but you leave the investors in the dark when it comes to dangerous chemicals. Until now, things were quite straightforward. Investment in carcinogenous, mutagenous, bioaccumulative, persistent chemicals is not sustainable, full stop. Now, only the chemicals which have already made it on the candidate list. It's not only the self-classified. The ones that have a harmonized classification, that are a recognized substance of very high concern, scientifically proven by a lot of experts and so forth, but they're simply not yet on the candidate list. Only 10% of them are on the candidate list yet. And the other 90% will get a free ride. So an investor might find his green asset being browned when the substance lands on the candidate list, which it inevitably will. And so how can an investment in substances which are so dangerous be sustainable at all? And last but not least, you call this a quick fix, but no one will take action following this legislation if they can expect more to come. So why the hurry?
Thank you. Commissioner. I'll try to reply to the several questions. I may need some help on a detail or two, but on the taxonomy to allow comparability and avoid greenwashing, it continues to be the goal. That is why we are preserving taxonomy, making it simpler, but preserving taxonomy. And I would like to highlight that we hear you, but we spoke to many stakeholders. We had a public consultation that had over 360 respondents. So we actually listened to a significant part of the stakeholders, including yourselves, obviously, but we also listened to others. And in our view, we have respected the result of such consultation and came out with a proposal which is balanced, taking into account the different interests here present, because we have to consider the interest of the environment, but we also have to consider the interests of the competitiveness of our economy, which is also important. And what we are trying to provide is a balanced outcome. So, about the grace period for the financial institutions. As I have explained, the intention here is to allow them to actually report. They were reporting on the GAR, but the point is that the report as it was being made was meaningless. So why do we want an information that is not useful and has no meaning? Because it was not properly conceived, if I may put it like that, or designed. So what we are trying to do now is allow, it's a grace period, then they will have to comply, because we want them to be able to report also for the thousands, millions of retail clients they have, where many of the funding that they give is actually directed towards greener activities. If you change your windows to become efficient, or if you have a solar panel in your house, if you have new isolation, whatever helps to make it more sustainable, to save energy, you name it. But that is very detailed. We're talking about thousands, hundreds of thousands of clients, sometimes for a single institution. So we want them to have this. If they would continue to report only in a part, it would continue to have no real meaning. So there is no point in having information which we cannot really extract value from. The materiality threshold, I have explained that it's about not making it too burdensome to report on an irrelevant or an immaterial part of a company's activity, but they will still have to explain what that means. So what activities are those and why they are not material. So, and when you talk about maybe it allows me to go to your next question about oil and gas. Well, the materiality thresholds are technology neutral. All CSRD companies benefit from the materiality tests under the proposed taxonomy. But this 10% threshold is cumulative. So I honestly don't understand how an oil and gas company could have oil and gas, meaning less than 10% on a cumulative basis of their activity. I'm sorry, but maybe I'm missing your point here. So in any case, the reporting company will have to disclose all the non-material activities. And if those non-material activities are fossil fuels, they will have to clearly say so. That continues to be transparent. We are not reporting on fossil fuels because they're not material, and they will have to explain why they are not material. So again, maybe I'm missing the point, but I think that this transparency is safeguarded. And on the dangerous chemicals, we have, again, tried to make a balanced decision, considering the concerns which were expressed by our industry and by our companies. And these dangerous chemicals, to use your own words, is something that is evolving, and they make its way into another list. But the problem is that the self-identified substances, for the companies, they often say they cannot prove that they don't have a viable alternative. So the point is that they will not be able to prove that, and not being able to prove that, they will not be able to be considered aligned, even if everything else in their activity is actually taxonomy aligned and contributing to a sustainable outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 10 minutes left, and I give the floor to Lee Anderson.
Thank you very much. Since it's late, I think it's good to kind of start with the basics. And the EU is facing a significant challenge when it comes to the climate investment gap. So it has been estimated that we would need new annual investments by around 350 billion euros every year to reach EU's climate and industrial objectives for 2030. So it's quite clear that to fix this, we will need a lot of public money, and we should also look at how our fiscal rules could support this better. But we also need changes in private money flows, and this was the whole idea of the taxonomy, to be kind of the key tool and also compass, as a colleague mentioned here, to enable this. And it's why it's so concerning that the Commission is now weakening the EU taxonomy, because this is, of course, what is going to happen. And also to significantly reduce the reporting scope. And as has already been mentioned, again, this is not simplification. This is in many ways complication of rules. And this is, again, deregulation that is just being masqueraded or presented as simplification. And therefore, the left will be tabling an objection to this delegated act. But I would also like to hear how the Commissioner sees the taxonomy after these changes. Can we say that the taxonomy will be a gold standard internationally when it's being weakened in this way? And what is your assessment of what the changes now proposed to the do no significant harm principle will mean for this principle?
Thank you. Now I give the floor to Anja Arndt for ESN.
Ja, danke, Frau Vorsitzende und sehr geehrte Kommissarin. Die Taxonomieverordnung ist in Unternehmerkreisen ein bekanntes Folterwerkzeug. Sie macht Vorgaben für Investitionen, die die gesamte Wirtschaft ideologisch gängeln. Die Industrie, der Energie-, Bau- und Immobiliensektor, die Abfallwirtschaft, der Verkehr, die Wasserwirtschaft und das Finanz- und Versicherungswesen sind betroffen. Da wurde mal wieder ganze Arbeit gemacht von der Kommission. Alle Investitionen müssen analysiert und transparent gemacht werden, inwieweit sie dem nutzlosen Klimaschutz dienen und den Green Deal voranbringen. Das ist nichts anderes als eine planwirtschaftliche, anmaßende Makrosteuerung. Wie umfangreich der Bürokratieaufwand ist, das fand das Zentrum für europäische Politikstudien in einer Studie heraus. Jedes Unternehmen hat bei Einführung im Durchschnitt einen Aufwand von rund 36.000 €. Die laufenden Kosten liegen jedes Jahr im Durchschnitt bei 14.000 €. Besser geht es nicht, wenn man die Wirtschaft und die Wettbewerbsfähigkeit der EU weiter zerstören will. Und wer da nicht mitmacht, also seine Investitionen nicht nach diesen Zielen ausrichten kann oder die angelegten Maßstäbe nicht zum Unternehmen passen, der bekommt Kredite zu schlechteren Bedingungen oder gar keine mehr. Jetzt muss auch diese Verordnung durch ein Omnibusverfahren vereinfacht werden, weil die Kommission auch hier sich völlig vertan hat und das Ding nicht umsetzbar ist. Diese diktatorische Gängelung unserer Unternehmen muss nicht vereinfacht werden, sondern aufgehoben werden. Meine Frage lautet, auch diese Verordnung wird durch den Trickle-Down-Effekt nicht nur die berichtspflichtigen Unternehmen treffen, sondern indirekt auch alle Unternehmen entlang der Lieferkette. Wie schätzen Sie die Auswirkungen dieses Trickle-Down-Effekts ein?
Commissioner.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, we indeed need private money. On that, we agree. The public money alone will not be able to satisfy the investment needs of Europe, not on environment for the climate transition, but also for other goals. And that's actually the main point of my portfolio, is trying to create the conditions for private money to be able to flow where it needs to go. And also to give the money of Europeans the opportunity to benefit from these opportunities. We don't see this as weakening the taxonomy. We see this as compatibilizing different perspectives, such as yourself and the Member of Parliament we heard immediately after you. Yes, we do have different visions on what this means, and we also have in the industry a lot of companies saying that they face significant challenges and that they have to put too much resources on the reporting efforts, and that actually they are spending more money and more effort there than on their core business, which is also something that I don't think any of us could defend. So again, what we are trying to do is not weakening the taxonomy, is preserving the core of the taxonomy and the information relevant for investors. And we did have lots of stakeholders consulted, investors included, and we believe that we have a reasonable and balanced outcome, making it less burdensome, but still preserving what is really important. On whether the rules are becoming more complicated, I respect your view on that, but actually the feedback we have from the different stakeholders says otherwise, that this is truly simplification. So again, with full respect, that is the feedback that we have, and considering the different stakeholders, that is what has guided our decision on the Taxonomy Delegated Act. And on it still being a golden standard internationally, there are over 60 taxonomies worldwide. We continue to engage in this dialogue. We continue to engage with all the like-minded partners. We are deeply involved in the G20 discussions, in the International Platform for Sustainable Finance, so that we can all learn from each other and protect the climate together. Because actually, as you know, this is a joint effort, because we cannot protect the climate on Europe alone. This is a joint effort. That is why Europe, the European Union, is also so invested in the international fora where these discussions take place. On Ms. And, we don't think that taxonomy is useless at all. Actually, the fact that there has been a lot of investment in taxonomy-aligned activities shows that it is useful. That is why we want to preserve it. But at the same time, we know that for some companies, the balance between the cost and benefit was not the right one. That is what we are trying to address. Also, the trickle-down effect you mentioned on the supply chain, but that is not on the taxonomy itself. It is on the CSRD, which we will also be discussing with this House, and there is where we try to address the problem of the trickle-down effect on the smaller companies, even if they are descoped from reporting obligations. It is not something that stems from the taxonomy itself, but it's something that we are also aware of and trying to address as part of the package we call the Omnibus One. Thank you.
Thank you. Now it's time to conclude the scrutiny session. I don't know if you want to add something, Commissioner? No? Okay, so I would like to thank you for this scrutiny session. As you know, the EU taxonomy regulation adopted in 2020 is a landmark legislation in the field of sustainable finance. Its continued implementation and adoption by stakeholders is key to channel investment in green and sustainable activities. It is therefore crucial for the Parliament to pursue its scrutiny activities in this regard. And I think that part of the European Parliament is a little bit concerned because we have the feeling that maybe we listen to only part of the business. But there is a wide range of the business that like and enjoys the taxonomy that we are not listening to. And I now pass the floor to my co-chair, Mr. Antonio De Caro, for his closing remarks.
Grazie Presidente, ringrazio la commissaria Albuquerque per aver partecipato a questa commissione, per aver portato chiarezza anche sui contenuti dell'atto delegato. Ringrazio anche i colleghi che si sono alternati nelle domande, nelle richieste di chiarimento. Molti erano in contemporanea in plenaria e quindi hanno dovuto sdoppiarsi in questo doppio ruolo oggi per intervenire anche in plenaria. Spero abbiate ricevuto le risposte alle vostre domande. Vi ricordo che il termine interno per presentare un'obiezione è l'8 ottobre del 2025. Se non ci sono altre questioni vi ringraziamo e dichiariamo chiusa questa riunione. Grazie.